Save our king! Save our king! Save our king! This is the day where we stand on terrorism on their fucking necks!
Identifiably Muslim young men, some armed, have been also shown on camera attacking people in the streets. And this is really just a completely appalling, and I'm sorry to say this, completely predictable situation. 3 girls at a Taylor Swift themed dance party in the town of Southport. And the sense clearly in the immediate aftermath of that, this is just an observation, was that the authorities were withholding the identity of the suspect. Now, there are some reasons why they might do that, but obviously tensions locally were extremely high, feelings were extremely high, and the way to try to control the information obviously completely backfired, as you would expect it to. And that's led to these riots across city after city in the UK. It's extremely disturbing. These riots of themselves provoked counter-riots.
Douglas Murray recently expressed strong condemnation of the riots in the UK, emphasizing the government's failure to address the underlying issues that led to the unrest. He criticized the lack of effective policies and decisive action to prevent such incidents, suggesting that these riots were symptoms of deeper social problems that had been too overlooked long. Murray argues that without addressing these core problems, such as economic disparity, social alienation, and ineffective policing, the country will continue to face similar turmoil.
All right, Douglas, let's start with the UK riots. Keir Starmer, the police, the media have all been clear who they blame for the unrest. The far right, they say, fueled by disinformation online. There's even suggestions of banning platforms like X and cracking down further on free speech. Is that the answer to what we are seeing, which are really clearly deep underlying issues in communities across the country, from places like Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Rotherham, Middlesbrough, London, and even as far as Belfast in Northern Ireland?
Well, yes, this all started after a young man, a 17-year-old, stabbed to death 3 girls at a Taylor Swift themed dance party in the town of Southport. And the sense clearly in the immediate aftermath of that, this is just an observation, was that the authorities were withholding the identity of the suspect. Now, there are some reasons why they might do that, but obviously tensions locally were extremely high, feelings were extremely high, and the way to try to control the information obviously completely backfired, as you would expect it to. And that's led to these riots across city after city in the UK. It's extremely disturbing. These riots of themselves provoked counter-riots where identifiably Muslim young men, some armed, have been also shown on camera attacking people in the streets. And this is really just a completely appalling, and I'm sorry to say this, completely predictable situation. Indeed, I can say it's predictable because I said exactly this sort of thing would start happening 7 years ago or so in my book, The Strange Death of Europe. It's horrible to be proved right in such circumstances because you don't want to be proved right about something like this. You want people to listen and change their policies. But, you know, the last few days have shown the Labour government refusing to concede that there is anything other than what they call far-right violence going on. They claim that there isn't a two-tier policing system in the UK, which everybody with their own eyes can see is not the case. Clearly, there is a two-tier policing system in the UK. These areas where this has happened in, what's more, are all areas where there were riots in 2011.
Douglas Murray's criticism of the UK's handling of the recent riots and the two-tier police system arguably stems from his broader concerns about social justice and the rule of law. Murray argues that the UK's policing system is seen as biased, with different social or ethnic groups being treated unequally. This perception can lead to distrust and resentment toward law enforcement and government. He cited specific incidents in which similar offenses by different groups received different responses from police. For example, the tragic incident at Taylor Swift's tour left 3 young girls without the right to live. Meanwhile, the government covered up the identity of the perpetrator. This caused a wave of outrage from people in Southport.
And as I write in The Spectator this week, one of the interesting things about that is that all of these areas are, among other things, areas where migration has continued to increase and joblessness has gone up. Now, just think of those 2 factors, anyone watching. You keep forcing immigration onto these areas, and you do nothing to improve the lot in these areas. Of course, nobody should be on the streets. The unbelievable hooliganism and thuggery of recent days should repel everybody. But, very often when there is some kind of violence or unrest, we hear political leaders and the wise heads in the commentariat saying we need to address underlying causes. Why has nobody said that in recent days?
And you're so right. Remember the media coverage in 2011, very different to what we're seeing now, and also throughout the BLM unrest that we saw not too long ago. Again, there was a great deal of sympathy for those who were behaving violently and certainly weren't peacefully protesting.
Murray points to economic disparity as a key factor behind the riots. Unemployment and poverty create feelings of hopelessness and frustration, which can manifest in violent behavior. He criticized the government for failing to improve conditions in these troubled areas. According to Murray, the lack of effective policies to address unemployment and social integration further exacerbates the problem.
Now, there are various segments of the left in the UK blaming X, formerly Twitter, for inciting violence. But Douglas, it's one of the few places where you can see what is happening on the ground without that media spin.
That's right, Rita. I mean, I've just seen a report from another so-called mainstream channel in the UK, where the quite clearly the journalists are trying not to reveal part of the story. What they're trying not to reveal is what they call Asian men in the area intimidating and harassing journalists. Well, these aren't, once again, you get back to the endless euphemism and lying that is just prevalent across our media. These are not, Hong Kong residents who have decided to go out and threaten people. They are, regrettably, organized Muslim groups. And, they're being whipped up by people, presumably in their community, but also by left-wing and other activists, obviously by the people on the street as well, to come out in force. Now, the idea that the answer to that is to crack down on Twitter, X, is an absolute case study of the failure of the political class in the UK.
With the recent riots in the UK, Murray expressed frustration with the media for not accurately reporting the involvement of organized Muslim groups in the violence. Murray unequivocally condemned the violence that occurred during the riots, stressing that such actions were detrimental to social stability and the rule of law. He pointed out the negative impact these riots had on local communities, including property damage, people's fear and strain on public services. Murray criticized the media for not being transparent about the involvement of organized Muslim groups in the riots. He argues that the media's reluctance to report on these aspects contributes to a distorted understanding of events. He attributes the media's reluctance to highlight the role of specific groups to political correctness and the fear of being labeled discriminatory or racist. Murray believes that this approach prevents an honest discussion of the causes and motivations of the riot. Murray also asserted that organized Muslim groups played a significant role in orchestrating and escalating violence during the riots, He called for a thorough investigation into the activities of these groups and their influence on events.
UK. I remember in 2017 when 3 Muslim men went across London Bridge slitting people's throats and shouting, "This is for Allah." And the Mayor of London and the then Prime Minister, Theresa May, came out and said that we need to address online radicalization. And then Theresa May set up somebody to look into the definition of extremism. What have they actually done in all of these years? Absolutely nothing. And it'll be the same with this. They'll lock some people up, and they will demonize all sorts of people, and they'll cover for others, but they will do nothing to address this. The British public have been begging for years for consecutive governments to bring down immigration and to increase opportunities in the UK. Not only were they not listened to, they were reviled, insulted, and much more. And, it also needs to be said, each of the towns in which these awful riots have been occurring are all places that are resonant with huge crimes that were covered up by almost everybody in authority. I'm thinking of what are called the grooming gangs, but are the rape gangs, which struck in Rotherham, in Rochdale, in town after town, whose names are back in the news now. And obviously there's no excuse for the rioting. Why does nobody in government, and a Labour government at that, not listen to these people, at least find out what has gone so badly wrong in these areas, that reports of who carried out this atrocity in Southport at the dance class for children, that could ignite a country? It doesn't suggest to me that the country is in a healthy state.
Douglas Murray has strongly condemned the recent riots in the UK, blaming the unrest on government inaction on basic socio-economic issues. He argues that failure to address these root causes has led to a breakdown of social order, resulting in violence and chaos. Murray bluntly condemned the violence witnessed during the riots, stating that such actions are detrimental to social stability and the rule of law. He argues that many communities feel socially alienated and abandoned by the government. This alienation breeds resentment and makes violence more likely to erupt. Murray advocates for inclusive economic policies that create job opportunities and support economic growth in affected areas. This includes investing in education, vocational training, and infrastructure to stimulate local economies. Murray emphasized that addressing these issues is essential to restoring public trust in government and law enforcement. Failure to act could lead to further division and instability. Without a comprehensive and empathetic approach, the spiral of violence and instability will continue to threaten the long-term stability of society. In summary, Douglas Murray's condemnation of the British riots goes hand in hand with strong criticism of the government's failure to address the underlying problems of economic disparity and social alienation.